In a world full of distractions, there is one big question on every dog owner's lips.
How do I become more than just the person holding the other end of the leash?
We all get dogs with a dream in mind, a vision of the future. And if right now your everyday reality isn't quite that picture you had in mind, you are in the right place.
It really doesn't have to be this way.
You absolutely can and will be more to your dog than just the person who gets in between them and the world.
The key is you need to be more sexy.
More sexy than the neighbourhood cat.
More sexy than the jogger in the park.
More sexy than that half-eaten hamburger they just found on the floor.
And yes, even more sexy than the dog across the road.
I'm Tom.
And I'm Lauren.
Together we're Absolute Dogs.
And you're listening to the Sexier Than a Squirrel podcast.
Hello and welcome to this episode of the Sexier Than a Squirrel podcast, the podcast that teaches you how to train your dog and also how to have a stress-free and life of thrive rather than survive.
Wow, thrive. So talking about thriving, I was flicking through our Agility Academy actually, Tom, and I was looking through some of the agility struggles, and one of the big struggles that I see in the Agility Academy, and I suppose being an agility competitor, I see it in the wider sort of dog sport world, is that our dogs sometimes are flung into situations that maybe they're not completely prepared for, and maybe they find a little challenging. So to put you in the picture, for those of you that maybe haven't been to something like this, actually this is an event that maybe there's a lot of movement going on, there's a lot of noise, there's a lot of surprising noises, there's a lot of dog barking, there's a lot of dogs lunging. If you walk behind a vehicle, the whole vehicle might explode as you sort of go past a vehicle, because there will, in the UK at least, be dogs there. And for those of you that like shock, horror, there are dogs in a vehicle, the vehicle's open, the owners are around, and they're at the dog event, and their dogs will be waiting for their turn, and they will be making sure they're safe all the time. The big thing I suppose I'm saying is dogs don't always handle these environments correctly, and yet they're put in these positions.
Absolutely. And the thing is that you might have never been to an agility competition, you might never plan to go, and yet you'll be able to relate to this and take something from this episode, because actually many busy environments hold the same challenges, whether that be going to your local country show, or whether that be actually just going to the town centre, or for some of you, actually as soon as you leave your front door, you are in one of these busy, complex environments by the nature of where you live.
I have to relate to that, because recently my brother said to me, do you want to come up to Brighton, Lauren, because I'm at I've got a couple of bits on and it'd be really cool to see you, and he's actually recently had a new baby, so it was like a really good excuse to get up to Brighton. And being me, I was like, yeah, I'll bring a couple of the dogs with me. Like I just didn't think twice. I know that I can put them in his house, and I know that they can travel with me and they're good to travel. And when I got there, like I couldn't park anywhere, let alone the fact that I was like right in the middle of like inner city, which is so different to where we live, right? And for me, it was just thrown into a whole new world. The fact that there was someone walking past dressed as a clown, the fact that there were parades going on, the fact that it was like loud, and my brother's right in the middle of Brighton, like he's right in the hive of the activity. I never quite understand like why he doesn't have like lots of pets when he talks to me, because he loves them. But then when I got there, I could kind of see the difficulty. Very small gardens, if not no gardens, not easy places to let them out, just busy, congested hive of activity. And so I suppose whether you're at an agility show like I am week in, week out, burger vans and lots of dogs and lots of activity and people with umbrellas and whatever else going on, or whether you're in the middle of Brighton and your city centre, there's actually a lot we can take in terms of common ground here.
100%. And I think the first thing that we've got to be aware of is the importance of, before you even get to that environment or you're topping it up on a daily basis, the importance of optimism for these dogs. Things are happening all the time. Person wearing clown outfit, right? There's nothing more novel than that.
I genuinely, double took myself and was like, really? I've never seen a clown in Oakhampton, which is obviously where Tom and I live. You know what? They're scared. It didn't necessarily scare me, but it surprised me, would probably be a better word. It took me by surprise.
And so what we've got to think about is actually we're not working with, specific things. We're not working with specific triggers. Actually, novelty is happening and being thrown at our dogs from every angle all the time. And firstly, this means that we should grow optimism at home, play some optimism games, like a great place to start for all of you wondering where you can find out how to grow your dog's optimism and confidence would be the Naughty But Nice Revolution book that we've written that you can find on the Absolute Dogs store. And equally, how in these environments, they probably need our support, right? You know, the environment's asking them questions all the time. The clown's popping up and saying, am I good or am I bad? The car is driving past, am I good or am I bad? There's a dog over there, am I good or am I bad? There's a person over there, am I good or am I bad? There's a noise over there, am I good or am I bad? And so actually, if we can, you know, answer some of those questions for them, even if it's just 50% by saying, you know, nice or good job when these things appear and giving them some of their daily food allowance, at least they only have, you know, 50% of the questions to answer, and therefore they don't get exhausted. They're better able to stay in an optimistic state. And actually, you know, you're kind of going through this environment together as a team, and they kind of know that you're there for them rather than you're just leaving them on the end of the lead to figure it out for themselves.
I think the other thing that backs that up, Tom, is for me, in addition to me being there as part of their team, I'm going to look after them. Like, I'm going to look after them. And so I really want them to know that they never need to like go forward and like take it on themselves. Like, whatever it is, I'm going to look after the situation. And I always want to be there going, no, you know what, I've got this. And then therefore together we have got this. So I never want them. A good example of this, and it was at an agility event, I had Tokyo at my side. Someone came over and they had a young male similar age to him. And they were like, hi, how are you? Nice to see you. And their young male was looking, and he had that intentional look, and he was like, and it was quite a low grumble. And I looked and I could hear the low grumble. So I looked down my lead because I couldn't feel a grumble. Like, I couldn't feel the lead vibrate. And I looked over and I was like, and he was doing the intense stare. And Tokyo was kind of like low wagging his tail and looking around like, I'm not quite sure what this is about. So all I did was I popped him on the other side of me and I just asked him to settle. I put my hand on his left shoulder, put him there. And literally I kind of said to him, we've got this. But what I did do also was interrupted his look, and I dropped a couple of bits of food on the floor, popped my hand there to say, it's okay, you don't need to take this one on. And I think it's important that we're there to do that for our dogs. Absolutely. Now, this was at an agility event. It's a high arousal event. It's an explosive event. It's the first event he had been to. And for me, that event could shape his future. And I think there is this notion of like one-time learning or strong one-time learning. All he would need was to go to that event and have that event with that dog, and that could easily be a bang, right? That could easily be a relationship gone wrong there. Exactly. If you let both of those leads go loose and just like go interact with each other, that could definitely go wrong. And I think this happens so often that people are like, oh yeah, they'll be friends for a minute. No, actually, this is the wrong environment to let them take it on themselves. So for me, reiterating and backing up and then even taking it further, is it good, is it bad? Sometimes actually we can really shape that, can't we, to really give them back up.
Exactly. It's almost stepping in and giving them support wherever needed. And
I don't want him to take that on his own.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
I really don't.
A level of, oh, I spot that too. Here is what we're going to do
here's
about
a hand.
it. Right?
Here's me going to give you some help. I'm not going to let you ride this one alone. Same as if you said to me, look, Lauren, one of the dogs has got this. I'm straight away, how is everything? Is there anything I can do? Because actually, if we can ride it together, or if we can support each other, and I think that's really important. Our dogs know that we've got their backs.
Yeah, and that is something that is actually, it's difficult to kind of quantify, you know, the effect that has, almost a level of trust, a level of confidence in the relationship, a level of, I don't have to sort this out for myself.
And a level of competence from the handler. And that's where Sexier Than a Squirrel listeners, we're really pleased you're listening. Yeah. This is your education. Tick and pat on the back and whatever else you need to say. You are doing a good job. You're here, you're present, you're learning. You're learning for yourself. You're learning for other people's dogs. You're learning for all of the dogs that you get to meet. I think for me, I want a competent handler at the other end of that leash. And so for me, this is how you become more competent. Equally, Tom, when this situation happened, a lot of people can go into a mild panic and pick their dog up, or can go into like over fluffing it. Yeah. Like, I think that for me, it was a level of, I've clocked that. You sit there, buddy. It's all good. I'm going to stand here. Yeah. Matt, you might want to stand there. And then Tokyo, you stand there for a minute. And so you kind of can manage these situations without ever letting them really flare.
Absolutely. And so leading on from that, then, what can we do in addition to, you know, in addition to supporting them by giving them positive outcomes, telling them that, you know, these things are good, and also then stepping in and in a way managing and helping them with that situation? What else could we do? Well, actually, it even comes down to the choices of where we choose to spend our time in that environment, right? So first things first, first tip is that keeping them moving wherever we can is likely to get a much better outcome than leaving the situation still for too long, right? If we can keep them moving, they're much better able to cope with that environment. Actually, not just cope, but thrive rather than just survive.
It diffuses the situation, doesn't it, movement? Yeah. Movement just allows it to it allows more disengagement by the very nature of walking.
Exactly.
And it allows more bucket emptying.
Yeah.
So you can you can watch, both Tom and I have taught huge amounts of like naughty but nice sort of coaching and dog sort of clientele. And so for me, knowing all of those dogs, I know that walking on the whole can get them out of dodge.
Yeah, absolutely. And so keeping them moving, and then also thinking about when you do choose to kind of stop or station yourself, where are you going to station yourself? I was at a country show a couple of weeks ago, and I was kind of a little bit shocked about how vulnerable people would make themselves sometimes by kind of stopping in a really busy walkway where there'd be lots of other dogs walking past, when there were perfectly suitable areas that were just kind of off to the side. You could still see, what was going on in the ring that they wanted to watch, whatever was happening there, and it wasn't in the way. And I think sometimes we when we go to a place with a purpose, with this is why I'm at this place. It might be, I don't know, to watch the showing of the cows at the local country show. It might be to do agility. We kind of lose track of anything else that we need to do in that environment as well, like make great choices for our dogs, like support our dogs in the very best way possible, and we kind of get a bit one-track minded. And so actively be thinking about, I could station myself here, I'm going to keep myself moving in the meantime, station myself here, and being aware that even, let's take the example of showing of the cows, because that's the first one that came to mind. Even then, what I would be doing is, I'd station myself, but I wouldn't leave my dog staring at the cows that at some point might do something that seemed vaguely threatening to them and they get worried about. I might be having them, catch bits of food. I might be having them do left spins, right spins. They might do middle, and then I might release them from middle. And I'm keeping them moving, because otherwise, what they go into is they go into this state of stillness. Stillness tends to not make dogs feel that great. It's not really a confidence boosting body posture, and then they've got all these things that they can watch and get offended by something because we're not managing their focus, right?
I think the other thing that for me is a major acknowledgement, being around sporting events for a long time, and being around situations like this, is there's a lot you can do being a responsible owner that actually for me seems, I'm sometimes told off for being a little bit blunt, for me seems like not apparent and really should be, right? So I'm going to give a few of my sort of real dislikes and the things that we could do about them. Because one of my dislikes would be walking past a vehicle that all launches at you. So you walk past a vehicle and the whole vehicle launches. Now, as an owner, what I've decided is I don't take those paths where I don't need to. Now, if we think about this in everyday life and not agility, there are lots of places you don't need to walk. So if you've got a neighbour with a lunging dog that runs at a fence, you don't need to walk that way. There will be another way. Yeah,
in fact, I've got a really good example of this where somebody learnt this lesson well, and that was I was walking in, it was a town near to where we live, and I had two dogs with me. I think I had Thistle and Lava, maybe Thistle and Lava, and we were walking down the street, and I saw that there was a dog in a car who was barking at people and dogs as they went by. Now, I saw that dog was on the side of the street, that car was on the side of the street that we were walking on, and I crossed the street, mainly because, one, I don't need my dogs to experience being barked at, through glass, and that's just, if I have the choice, why put them through it?
And like it's no different when people think about like a dog barking at another dog and think that it's okay. For me, it's no different to like a pub brawl with like someone coming up and going blah, 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 at you. Like it exactly. Isn't necessarily ever going to be a good thing.
No. And then secondly, I'm also thinking, gosh, that poor dog that's kind of barking at everybody and everything through that window. I don't want to be one of those things, poor animal. And so I crossed the street and then walked along, and then I saw a lady with a very well behaved little terrier, and to the point where almost it was like my dog's fine, and therefore I'm going to walk past this vehicle with the dog that's barking. And to be fair, her dog was fine at that point. However, the dog got so stressed in the car that actually the window was slightly open. It squeezed through the window and got to her dog. And what happened was a dog fight in the middle of the street. And that actually, you think about it, and that could have just been so easily avoided. The decision that I'd made 30 seconds beforehand that owner didn't make led to very different pictures, right? And that was in the space of a couple of minutes.
Now, whether we judge the person that's got the dog in the car or how we feel about that dog, it doesn't really matter. It's actually what you do with... I remember someone recently getting very angry. It was a training client getting very angry about a dog that had run over to their dog on a walk. And I said, the big thing is you can't control other people or what they're doing. No. What you can do is control and lead yourself. Yeah. And so leading yourself might sometimes mean turning around and going a different direction. Yeah. Sometimes for me, it's going out on the bridle path here and turning around and coming home again because the neighbour's Springer Spaniels are loose and I know that they aren't particularly nicely mannered. It doesn't necessarily mean that you do what you intended, and you sometimes have to change the plan. Now, going back to the dog show bugbears, because I think there's lots of them for many people, but one of them for me is lunging vehicles. Now, very quick one that we can do, all of us, to help with, and obviously dogs aren't always in vehicles, and this is in the UK where it is the way that dogs are handled between agility events. You can sheet your car and you can put covering over your car, and your car is completely covered, and therefore with a silver sheeting, and therefore they can't see dogs coming up to the vehicle, and the dogs walking past can't see them. And for me, that's a very simple safety measure. Another one is to close those doors but open a different door, so actually allow a different door to be open instead. So actually that's something that we can also consider doing. Obviously we don't want dogs in hot cars. At the same time, there are other ways to make sure that our dogs don't have to be watching constantly, effectively, TV going by that they want to work with and jump on and bark at. So that's number one for me. Number two, and this is another one that I see a lot, is people putting a dog in a queuing situation in a sporting event. So there might be a queue of, say there's a class of, 250 in the UK. So there's a class of 250. There might be a queue of 30 to 40 dogs, all queuing, watching the dog that's in the event or the arena. So all in a queue position. I personally, even if I'm not with Matt and I haven't got someone to queue for me, I still would say to the two people around me, I'm coming back. I've counted, there's 8 dogs till my turn. I will be away no more than a few minutes. I've got my eye on you and I'm coming back to that spot. I'd really appreciate it if I can come right back there. Now, if they need to do the same, then we'll just come up with the order between us. But what we wouldn't do is leave our dogs. And Tokyo is literally, he's been to very few dog shows and he's literally there like a rock star. He just is like, yeah, I got this. I know what this is about. He's cool with it. But I don't put him in the position that he needs to keep rehearsing the behaviour. What do you think, Tom?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And you think about a queuing situation, it's complex. There's a lot happening.
Oh, it's so complex.
It's still, right? There's a lot of sitting and
waiting.
And if you're not, if you're not managing your dog's focus and you're not managing where they decide to look, then chances are they will find something to be offended by, right? And so first of all, do they even need to be in that situation? And when stillness is absolutely, there's no other way around it other than to kind of anchor yourself, then how can you keep your dog moving and manage their focus in such a way that they're not finding something to be offended by?
And when you said about finding something to be offended by, I'm at both ends of the spectrum. So if I'm in the queue, say, situation scenario, and say I choose to queue with a dog like Tokyo, Tokyo is going to watch the ring and he's going to be offended by the fact, or very excited by the fact, that lots of dogs are moving fast. I know Bet would be the same. They watch and they're bred to manage movement. So surely it should come as no surprise to us that when they are sat there in a queuing situation and there's lots of movement in front of them and they are on a lead and they can't move themselves and they can't get to it, it should not come as a surprise that they explode, right? They explode at some point. That should be no surprise. Equally, I'm on the other end of offensive when I've sat there with Blink, because Blink is the offending thing. So she'll be bouncing, spinning, grabbing grass, running up and down, moving like the busy little Blink she is. And in that moment, some dog will be offended by her. Next door, Jack Russell Terrier, who thinks very little of her offensive movement, or maybe the little sharp, the what they call Shih Tzu type dog, who's like, dear Lord, what are you doing? And so she's offensive. So she is the offending dog. So ultimately, this isn't a good position to put our dogs in. Now, you could consider this in lots of different scenarios, waiting outside shops or going to a local park and being being on a lead, when someone's throwing a ball. It's not actually that dissimilar. Ultimately, Tom, I think the question we need to ask ourselves is it growing our dogs in the direction we want to grow them in?
Yeah.
And is this good for them right now?
Yeah, absolutely. And so leading on from that, I guess the biggest tip that we could give you is celebrating saying no to certain experiences with your dog. Celebrating saying, actually, I'm not going to parade them around the show. I'm not going to parade them around the competition.
Really quick one. I've got two of that, sorry. There's a little Merle dog at the weekend where I was competing, and this dog was in the middle of the rings, and I said to Matt, because obviously 10, 15 years ago, we made Pup to Perfection, like a long time ago now, and at the time, we would say, go up to the ring and play with your dog, and there was this dog right up against the ring, and it was really struggling, lunging, screaming, and the lady was angry with it, and you could tell she was angry. And that 10, 15 years ago, we would have been doing similar, trying to get them up in that environment. Now we would take them nowhere near it. Secondly, when we think about, so I would definitely say no to putting them in that position.
Exactly.
I just don't need to, and I don't feel it necessary.
Feel great about it, right?
Absolutely, feel like empowered, like I'm rocking it. And then secondly, the other one, I've got a fantastic client. Her name is Mel. She's a physio. She's a big shout out to her because she is amazing at this. She was walking around the rings, feeding a dog, moving a dog, getting them out with her and out and about, and just doing beautiful work. Someone came up to her and they said, "Oh, she's beautiful. Can I speak to her?" And she said she's actually practicing not saying hi to everyone at the moment, so I'm going to leave her at my side and she's going to lie down. And I'm really proud of what she's doing. So actually, if possible, no, don't say hi to her. She's practicing not greeting people. Like, how cool is that as an answer? Like, how good is that to say, no, actually, she's practicing not speaking to people because she really is over the top. And I think we have permission to do that, and yet so many people are reluctant, or it's almost like they're indecisive. Well, it's not even like they're indecisive. It's like they've not made that decision, so they allow the environment to make the decision for them, and it's not good.
Absolutely. And there'll be certain decisions that you'll be making that will lead to other decisions. For example, some of you, we totally get it. You're not yet at the stage of feeling comfortable with saying no to, people
certain
that want to pet your
interactions.
dog, for example. So what you've got to realize is, by you saying to yourself, I'm going to take my dog into that environment, you're actually already saying to yourself, you're going to have your dog be petted when maybe you don't want them to be petted, because you put them in that situation and you know that you're not going to be able to say no. So actually, maybe it is that we say no to the situation right now because we're not going to, we're not going to be able to manage that interaction.
Ourselves, right? Like, if we haven't got that impulse control, surely we can't then expect our dog to have it.
It's like we, often make this joke at people's expense, but if you're saying to yourself, I wonder what would happen if, then that probably means that you should not be doing it. Do not do it. If the words, no. I wonder what would happen if I did this, or if I let them do this.
If I let him off lead right now, would he? Or shall I try retrieve
that
right now? What do
no.
you think? And so I suppose that rounds it off really nicely with, actually, you have permission. You are more than enough. You are good enough. You're doing a great job. You're here learning. You're here growing. The environment that is sports or Brighton is complex. Whether you are in dog sports or whether you are in London and Brighton and wherever else it might be in the world that's complex, the thing is, you get to have the say. And I think for me, some of my sort of pet peeves or my struggles, dogs all lunging at the back of a vehicle, or someone sitting and allowing a dog to really get that sort of uppity about something they're frustrated about ultimately, or someone trying to force a dog into, I suppose, square peg round hole, you will sit and play with me here, even though there's a lot of stuff going on around that you can't cope with. Actually, we truly at Absolute Dogs now know you don't need to put the dog in the situation to be able to manage that situation when they come to it. I think Tokyo and Magma are fantastic examples of that. Tokyo, my young border collie, who is literally he's as cool as he can be at a show, and yet lots of people would say COVID broke my dog not being able to go to those events. He's actually better for it, I think, because he hasn't had those over and over and over and over exposures where it might have gone wrong. And the same for Magma, right?
Magma, Casino, they've not known any different than actually this kind of COVID world that we live in now.
Which is loads of optimism training. Don't think we don't train, guys. We train loads of optimism training, loads of confidence training, loads of good experiences,
loads of games at home that actually teach important skills that then whatever life throws at them, The things even that you can't even consider or think about, they take it in their stride because they get optimism. It's not about exposure to dogs, people, agility rings.
So it's not that Tokyo needs to sit and watch agility rings over and over and over and over to be able to handle the environment. Actually, the big thing is, does he handle novelty?
Yeah.
Can he handle like working in a new place?
Yeah.
Can he do a retrieve maybe in a new place? Is he able to be confident in the face of something that might be a bit tricksy? And all of those things build up to what we now know to be a rock solid, rock sort of star in the agility world. At the same time, what we're saying to you guys is you have permission to say no, and you have permission to take your time, and you have permission to not overexpose your dog and actually think about, is this growing my dog in the right direction? Is this where I want him to be? And actually, I'm in charge of this.
Yeah, the power is in your hands. There is indeed a game for that. That was this episode of the Sexier Than a Squirrel podcast. We'll see you next time. And remember, stay sexy! Hey, before you go, have you taken part in the worldwide Sexier Than a Squirrel challenge?
It's a 25-day online video program, huge energy, amazing community, and over 6,000 people are already taking part.
The only question is, you know where you are today. Where do you want to be 25 days from now? Head to absolutedogs.me/sexy.